telephone companies. Would you say having an Afro-based telephone that is actually suited for Africa, just like the Chinese have got their one, the COS, and they've got the Huawei's and what have you, but obviously operate on the Linux and what have you. If Africa were to, the people you've mentioned just now, and there are numerous of them, to say, okay, you know what, we want to invest in our African product. Okay, instead of relying on the more expensive American, British, and Chinese one. I'm talking about the Apples, the Samsung, and what have you. Let's just develop our one, and obviously we'll be able to now encourage Africans, African small tech guys, startups, to develop apps for our telephone. Is that the way forward, or should we still just be open to what we've got in developed worlds, dumped on us?
Well, I think that we should be mindful of two things. Globalization means that we cannot actually detach ourselves from the rest of the world. So we'll still be a player in the world. But also, we should also be mindful that we also have peculiarities, all right? And some of these peculiarities are that, there is always that, gatekeeping, kind of phenomenon that makes it difficult for African businesses to go global. Today we talk about Dangote, for example, but it hasn't been easy for Dangote to scale. He probably had been doing this for years now. All right, can you imagine that if we had our own platforms of market, we had our own market, and I'm happy that we have the AFCTA going on. But can you imagine that if we have had that earlier, perhaps Dangote would have actually scaled long ago. Perhaps we would have had about 10, 20 of Dangotes in the continent, all right? But we do not have, because there are quite a lot of, regional blocks that actually prevent us, moving global and scaling, for example. So for me, I think that the way forward is for us to compete globally, but respond locally to our needs. And that means that we have young startups coming. They are developing amazing apps, some educational apps, gaming apps, fashion apps, entertainment apps, so many other apps that the young people are developing, but they do not have the market. Why? Because they cannot have access to the big operating software, the systems that we have. They cannot have access to, these, global players. So why don't we start developing our own app to also compete globally, all right, but also give opportunity to our young people in order that we can actually scale quickly. So there is nothing stopping us from engaging in the global world, but we must actually engage from the position of strength. And if we can actually engage from the position of strength, then it means we have to start building our own. Because look, the continent is huge. The continent is resourceful. The continent is rich. We keep saying that, but why are we not competing globally with our own, build up systems? It's actually difficult to understand. So for me, I think that the way forward is for us to invest. If governments can actually work with their own private sector to start giving some headway to our young entrepreneurs, our young, ICT, brains, to start doing something. And remember that when we start doing this, it is not only on ICT front. I have quite a number of students in journalism school, right? I teach in journalism school, for example. You have so many people who can write scripts, for example. There's so many fantastic ideas that they can actually put together. I teach in a business school. There's so many marketing, accounting, other professionals that could also bring their expertise into bear or to bear to make sure that these businesses can be sustainable. Why don't we provide the opportunity for these young brains to ensure that they could actually do something, massive for the continent and for the continent to actually grow? It is a way forward. We must actually start doing some of these things.
And indeed, yeah, because